Hi everyone, and welcome to this week's reading vlog. So I'm debating on doing something new coming up because a few of my friends on Booktube do it this way, and with the volume of books I've been reading, I just feel like it could be the best way to do this, especially during this time of COVID where I'm not leaving my house. So I'm thinking about switching to doing like weekly wrap-ups. My friend Steph at Steph's Romance Book Talk does this, where she just talks about the books she read that week, and then that's kind of like the Monday video she puts out. Because I feel like every clip of me is me sitting at this desk or me on my couch updating what I read, where I feel like I could just sit down at the end of the week, which my last clip usually is, and talk about every book I read, because then I wouldn't have to do like a mid-month wrap-up. I would just do an end-of-the-month wrap-up and talk about stats. But this way, because my end-of-the-month wrap-ups, you've seen, I'm only able to talk about the books that got like 5 stars and that are, you know, I just don't have the time, because otherwise those books are an hour, or those videos are an hour and a half long, and I didn't even get to talk about my favorites. So I'm thinking about doing that, but I'll still do this week's vlog, but I will then have like a weekly wrap up and just talk about everything I read. Because already like Sunday, Monday, I've read a lot of books, and then you didn't get to see last week's vlog because I don't do a vlog the last week of the month because of reasons. So that's a change I think I'm going to make. I think it'll be easier for me. I don't have to remember to film clips during the week then. I can just sit down on Sunday and go over everything that I read. But for this week, let's talk about what I'm reading right now, okay? So yesterday, our buddy read for Bringing Down the Duke started. This is by Evie Dunmore. This is supposed to be a historical romance. It's set in England in 1879, and it's about this woman named Annabelle Archer, who is the first female student going to Oxford. She's also trying to help women's suffrage and trying to help with the Women's Property Act, trying to make that a thing, which, if you don't know, this is an act that once a woman marries, like, all of her property belongs to her husband. So if, you know, he becomes in control of everything, which I think we all know is shit, and it was a stupid law when it happened, and it was ridiculous back then. But here's the thing. So I'm 3 chapters in, and I always give books 100 pages before I DNF. So this is how much I've read. This is how much of the book I'll give it before I DNF it. I'm not saying we're at that point, but I'm saying that with historical romance, I have some criteria. I am looking for pretty specific things. Number 1, I like them to usually be pretty charming and funny. Not all my historical romance need to be a comedy, but I usually like them to be. It's hard to describe this. I don't want this to be women's fiction, right? So that's my thing. And this one, which it's clear to me now why this book looks like it looks and why it was where it was in the bookstore when I bought it. This is going to be a women's fiction historical romance, meaning the characters in here are fighting for women's rights, or it's going to mean things important to women, or it's going to have social justice themes, or it's going to have that. And now I completely support those kind of books. I think they're important. I think they need to be written. I think there is a place for women's fiction, but I don't like to read it because I like books to be escapism for me. I've said this time and time again. I very rarely like to read serious novels that aren't serious because they're sexy. And I really, really don't like romances that are fighting this kind of fight. Like, I don't enjoy them. So I don't know how I'm going to feel. Granted, again, I've only read 3 chapters, and of course they're setting up this plot with this girl who she ends up being able to go to Oxford, and she's gonna have to kind of like pay her cousin who let her go. She's gonna have to pay for the person who's going to fulfill her role while she's gone, which is just super selfish, because he had free labor with her basically, and so she's gonna have to like pay for that. And she is working with the women's like suffrage movement. It's called something else in here, but she needs to try to wrangle high up men who will be on her side basically. So it's already like, it's trying to do some heavy lifting. That's a fact that the Fated Mates podcast always says, and I just don't know if that's the kind of book I want to read. But some people in my Discord, they've already read it and they liked it, and a lot of people were excited to read it. But this just isn't the kind of historical romance I want to read, which is what I was nervous about when I started seeing it everywhere and seeing it be so famous anyways. I was like, if the general population of readers like it, I probably won't like it because I'm contrarian that way. So there we go. But I'm still going to give it its 100 pages, which I will try to get through this week sometime and see if it catches me by then. That's why I give books 100 pages, because sometimes the first impression isn't where it's going. Next, I am starting Ignite Me. This is the third book in the series. I finished Unravel Me on Saturday. I really enjoyed it. I'm really invested in the things going on in the Shatter Me series. I know that originally this was the end of the trilogy, so I'm interested to see how it wraps up some things, because I know that she wrote the 3 and then came back later on. I'm really into the romantic things that are going on because I'm like that. Juliet is slowly getting less frustrating to me as she starts to appreciate her powers and come into herself. So I'm really into that. I'm like that. And also I'm reading Gabriels Rapture right now. This is the second book in the Gabriel series. There's 4 of them, I guess. And this is not what I was expecting. I started reading Gabriels Inferno the other day because I saw that it's out on Passionflix, and I was hearing some people say it was a good adaptation, which Passionflix and good is kind of a, you know, but I was intrigued enough to try it. And number one, these are not extremely smutty books. Sorry, the light. I'm gonna put this down. They are very sexual in like the feels they give you are very romantic, but this isn't an overly smutty book. The language used isn't extremely erotic, and in the first book there's only 1 sex scene. So if that's something you don't like in your books, I really suggest this. I guess my friends have told me this was actually Twilight fan fiction. Came out in 2011 originally. I want there to be more going on, but also the story being told is so rich and deep and beautiful. Gabriel is a professor at this school in Toronto, and this girl Julianne is, so he's a Dante specialist, and she's also going to be studying Dante, and so she's put in his classes, and they kind of get off to a bad start, and he doesn't recognize her. She is actually a family friend who he knew 6 years ago, but he only met her a couple times. It's his younger sister's friend, but she has been secretly in love with him for 6 years, and she finally ends up at his school in his class, and he doesn't recognize her, and also other things, which I don't want to spoil. But even though the covers seem, you know, steamy, this book has a lot more going on into it, and it was very romantic and gave me the angst is so high. Like, that's the part of it that reminds me of Twilight. The part where I can see is the angst level is so high, and it's like really believable angst when you're in it. And so that's why I just haven't been able to put it down, is even though there's parts of it where I'm like, oh my God, just bang, because for me, banging is the plot, is enough of a plot for me. But it also has some other serious things going on that I really like. So that's kind of what I'm reading at the start of the week here. Let me know what opinions you have about a weekly wrap up. I'm pretty sure I'm going to do it anyway. But if there's certain things you'd like to see, feel free to share your opinion. But yeah, I'll check back in soon. Hi. So I haven't wanted to check in this week because I have this monstrosity that decided to pop up on my face, but it's like healing now. And it's funny because cold sores are always the worst once they're healing because they like scab over and look disgusting. But I'm at my friend's house today. Don't mind her messy room right now because one of my friends isn't feeling good and I just wanted to come over and hang out with her. And also I got a really pretty gift in the mail from Manda. Thank you so much, Manda, for my birthday present. So I'm going to show you guys real quick what she sent me because it's adorable. So she sent me these really cute post-it notes, and then there's a bunch of these adorable bookmarks. So there's fire breathing bitch queen, which I just love. There's this cute little Harry Potter Gryffindor, and then there's an Outlander one that says, "It was a beautiful bright autumn day with air like cider and a sky so blue you could drown in it." And this really pretty Claire one that says, "The Trollop, otherwise known as Claire Fraser." And then there's these pretty Christian bookmarks that have like grace, peace, and love on them. So thank you so much for the belated birthday gift, Amanda. I only got Christmas gift or birthday gifts from like one person this year because of, you know, COVID. And it's not that I'm a huge gift person. It's more so that I usually have a really fun birthday get together where it's all about my friends and not so much about me. And it was just really hard not to have that this year. So yeah. Otherwise, in regards to reading this week, I haven't been able to finish anything. I'm in the middle of 9 books right now, which is a lot even for me. And by in the middle of, I mean, there's a few that I've only read like 20 pages of, and then there's some that I'm like halfway done with. So I'll definitely update you, you know, when I do the end of the week thing, and I'll tell you which ones I actually finished, because I don't feel like going into all 9 books that I've only read a couple chapters of. But I did find a new podcast called Smart Women Read Romance, and I'm just having a fun time going through that right now. So that's given me some recommendations and I'm having a good time. But yeah, thanks so much. I'll check in soon. Hey y'all. So I'm reading Bringing Down the Duke right now, and I just have to break in to make a comment about it because a couple things that are annoying me about it, right? So I'm annoyed about the theme. Like, I like that she's at college, but I'm not a huge fan that they're focusing on the suffrage and trying to make it a romance at the same time. I just don't. And I knew when I bought this book that it was probably going to be a little more political than I wanted. And it's always hard to like talk about this because it's not that I don't think women's suffrage was important. Obviously I do. Thank you. I'm happy I'm a voting member of society because of it. It's just that it's not a subject that I want in my romance because I just don't. And the second thing I don't like, and this is going to be kind of a spoiler, so spoiler, skip to the next clip if you don't want to know a spoiler for this. This is one of my least favorite things that comes up in a historical romance, where there's a high-ranking lord and a low-ranking woman, and when he desires her, he offers for her to be his mistress, instead of saying, screw that, I'm a duke, I'm going to marry this girl anyway. Because it's a lot easier for a duke to decide to marry who he wants than if it's like a woman who's going to marry low. Because he brings the woman up, she is generally brought down. And again, that's not fair But it's one of the things that makes a book kind of like a Cinderella story is when a duke will say, screw convention, I love this woman, I'm going to marry her. And this asshole, as they're having an amorous moment in the library, he gives her an orgasm. It's getting really sexy. He says, she says, okay, I want to stop right now before I like give in, right? And he's like, oh, okay. Yes, we should wait until we talk with my lawyer and we'll get terms set up. So he's saying he wants to make her his mistress. Which sucks because earlier he was going to ask her this and we all think that he's going to propose to her. And he gets interrupted. And then when this happens, we find out that he was never going to propose to her. He was going to ask her to be his mistress. And then they meet later and she kind of like freaks on him. Not freaks, but is like, okay, let's talk terms. So what does this look like? So you're going to make me your mistress. I'm risking everything. I would lose my position at Oxford. I would lose all my friends. I'd be seen as a fallen woman. I'd lose my dignity. And you have to marry someone someday and have an heir. And he's like, yeah, my wife wouldn't have anything to do with you. Like, she wouldn't get in your way at all. And she's like, well, what if your wife found out and didn't want you to have a mistress? What are you going to do? And he's like, you put me in a tight spot because no answer I say will be good. One of them, I'm a horrible husband, and one of them, I'm not a good protector. And she's like, that's the point. This isn't a game you can win. I can't be your mistress. Like, I wish I was a highborn lady. And he's like, but you're not. If you were a highborn lady, I would have already proposed to you. And so now I'm like, ugh. I'm 2/3 of the way in. I want to know how it's going to end. But I'm like, this isn't the historical romance for me because this is the kind of dude that I hate. Because it's okay for me if he in his head like struggles with it a little bit. Because I've read books before where the guy like wants to make her a mistress, doesn't want to make her a wife. But then he usually clicks pretty quickly and then is like, oh my God, I'm sorry that I tried to have you be a mistress. But it's never usually one of my favorite books. Like, I don't like when a guy is like that. And so I don't really like the political stuff happening. I'm not a huge fan of the character, and I don't really like how this love story is setting out. So it's kind of getting a lot of strikes from me. And at this point, since I didn't give up on it at 100 pages, I'm going to finish it. But I can't see it rating higher than a 3 stars unless it goes bananas for me. So just feels like a waste now. So I don't know how you guys are feeling about it, but the people that I've seen rate this book really highly, who have been more mainstream booktubers, people who don't read a lot of historical romance. I've seen a lot of people now, like Peru's Project, I've seen her read more historical romance because she read this book, which is great. I hope it pushes people who don't read historical romance into historical romance, all because this has a different cover than my favorite books. Maybe they'll try some mass market paperbacks now because they've tried this. But if you're someone who's read historical romance a long time, I think you probably see the problems with it that I do. So, not liking you, Montgomery. You're kind of a douche. Hey everybody, time to wrap up the week. Couple things. Sorry for the noise. It all of a sudden is 95 degrees today and we're expecting a huge thunderstorm to come in, so the humidity is bananas and I'm sweating to death. Holy crap. So I have some water right here. But let's wrap up this reading week because holy cannoli, there was a good amount that I need to touch on. So let's rip through these. And like I said, I feel like going forward, these vlogs are going to be for now replaced with kind of like weekly wrap-ups. A few of my friends on Booktube do it this way, and I think just for me, because I'm never leaving my house or doing anything right now, it's easier to just do this as like a weekly wrap-up for me instead of breaking in during the week. So I know you guys love my reading vlogs, but I think that's how we're going to change it up for the rest of COVID, just because it's a little bit easier on me. So let's go ahead and do this. So I read Love Wrecked by Karina Hale, however we say this. This is her newest release. This is a hate to love romance with a shipwreck on it. So we have this girl goes to New Zealand for her sister's wedding, and she ends up paired up with the best man, who is best friends with her soon-to-be brother-in-law, and they just do not get along together at all. They end up, for her sister's honeymoon, they end up on the best man and the couple who just got married end up on the best man's boat, and they are going to take this couple to their honeymoon destination, and this girl gets like wrapped up into doing it. Along the way, they get shipwrecked, end up on an island, the four of them together, and it is the same time that there's a huge storm that devastates a nearby island. So because they're okay and not in any immediate danger, they're not going to be picked up for a certain amount of time, and then this leads to their love story. I thought this was pretty cute, but it did have a super long build-up, and then the shipwreck ended up just more being a way to have forced proximity. So there was no real danger for these people during this time, and I don't know. I was just expecting a little more out of it, and so the romance was okay, but also the hero was very unlikable until 75% into the book, and I didn't really like the heroine either. So I ended up giving this book 3.5. I think I rounded it to a 4 stars. It just wasn't my thing. Then at the beginning of this month, I read the entire Blindfold Club series by Nikki Sloan. I've gotten into Nikki Sloan after reading the Filthy Rich Americans series last month, and so the Blindfold Club 1 through 3 is called the Manzano years, and this Blindfold Club is basically, it's a brothel where the women are always blindfolded, so they don't know the men that they're sleeping with unless the men want them to. The men can choose to take the blindfold off for you. And so ends up being 6 different books about these different women who are either the sellers at the club, so they always have this negotiator who helps negotiate the price for the woman, or maybe it's one of the women who is doing it. Most of these all have an element of BDSM included, and they were really fun. There's also different menages going on. There's threesomes going on. There was just all different kinds of mixed-matched sexuality happening, and they were really fun. And Nikki Sloan still always manages to hit me in the feels with these, no matter what she does. And so it was a really fun series to read. Oh, it was good. It was great. I was sad when it was done. I finally read my first Sophie Jordan, and I read The Virgin and the Rogue. This is an aphrodisiac novel. You can see she's holding one. So this main character, her name is Charlotte, and her sister is an apothecary, basically, a scientist. And she has this mixture that is supposed to help with cramps, which Charlotte gets really bad cramps. So she takes this at the beginning of her period, and it ends up having an aphrodisiac in it. So she runs into her brother-in-law's brother, and they already have this like contentious relationship going on. And when she runs into him to the hall, she basically drags him into her room and humps him against the wall to orgasm. And he kind of just sits there. He doesn't stop her, but he also doesn't like take advantage of her. She really does like take advantage of him, besides the fact where he could have stopped her, but he's just kind of like, whoa, what's going on? So he's super into her. However, she's engaged to someone else, and when she realizes what she did, what this aphrodisiac did to her, she's absolutely horrified. She explains to Kingston, hey, I was under a drug when this happened, and he's like, okay, if that's what you have to tell yourself. So he really kind of like brushes her off, and then it starts the story of him now pursuing her because he's very interested in her after she kind of throws herself at him. This was very cute. How it all gets worked out is adorable, and this was my first Sophie Jordan. However, this was also the 6th book in the Rogue Files. So then I went back and I listened to While the Duke Was Sleeping, which is the first one in the series. This one has a setback. And this one is about a girl named Poppy, and she witnesses a duke get hit and she saves him from getting run over by a carriage, and he gets put into a coma. So push comes to shove, she ends up being mistaken as his fiance, and if you've ever seen the classic movie While You Were Sleeping, things kind of progress like that. She gets mistaken as his fiance. His family is very welcoming and loving and is just so happy to have this woman. However, the man that the Duke was fighting with is his bastard half-brother Struan, who is a Highlander, and he doesn't believe that his brother would be engaged to a woman who works in a flower shop. And so he's onto her from the beginning, and he also starts to kind of pursue her to get answers, and it's adorable. So this is the first one in the series, and I plan to read all of them, but I really, really like this. I actually listened to this one on Scribd, and the accent of Struan, the lady did such a good job performing it. I loved it. Then I read With This Ring, which is the third book in the Wicked Worthingtons. This one is about the sister Electra, who she kidnaps a duke who is just coming back to town because she needs him and his money to save her family from ruin. He can't have any more scandal in his family or he is going to lose his dukedom. So he pretends to not be the lord, but to be his servant. And so now this girl feels like she's kidnapped the wrong person, and he starts to fall for her while trying to convince her that he's not the lord he says he is. So this one was okay. It's not my favorite in the series. It took a really long time for things to get worked out, and I wasn't a fan of that. But I really love the Wicked Worthingtons. All of the siblings are just so crazy, and I can't wait to continue the series. Then I read the new release, Say Yes to the Duke by Eloisa James. I love this. This is the next book in the Wilds of Window Castle. And this is about the stepdaughter of the Duke of Window. Her name is Viola Astley. And so she is a very, very shy. The beginning of this book, she interrupts a man and a woman having a tryst, and that man kind of freaks out on her and scares her, and she ends up like throwing up on his shoes and running away. And so she ends up delaying her debut for a few years because she's just painfully shy. Fast forward a couple years, she is interested in marrying the vicar of the town because she figures being his wife would be a very calm existence, and so she is interested in him. However, Devon, the Duke of Winter, who happens to be said Duke who scared her a few years ago, he meets her, thinks that she is beautiful and amazing and demure, and wants to marry her. And so he tries to woo her away from the vicar. So this book was so fun. A lot of people have had complaints because they say that Viola gets over her shyness too easily. I'm not someone who's dealt with crippling shyness. I know, you're shocked. So I can't really attest to that one way or the other. However, I really liked it, and for me it was believable in the sense that as he gives her confidence and as he loves her and as he encourages her, that some of that goes away. And I don't think that she's completely cured of being shy with everyone. She's just cured of being shy with him, which I think could happen when you are intimate with the person. So I really liked it. The last historical romance that I read was Bringing Down the Duke. This was a buddy read on my Discord. Most of us didn't have great feelings about this. Some people did though, so I don't want to discount them. I felt like this was much too much women's fiction for my taste. You can tell it's definitely packaged differently than your normal historical romance. But this is about a girl named Annabelle Archer, who is one of the first few female students at Oxford. It's in 1879, and she is part of the women's suffrage movement. And one of the things she needs to do is trying to get men of the peerage on their side to help repeal a certain act that basically keeps women from owning their property, which is something that won't be changed for quite a long time. And so she meets the Duke Montgomery, and he is just like, it's never gonna happen.
your cause is not going to happen, and I don't want any part of it. However, he ends up being really attracted to her, and they end up having a romance. This book had some tropes in it that I do not like. I don't want to ruin the story for you by telling them to you, but I think I mentioned it in one of my clips previously, and I mentioned it in my Goodreads review what I don't like. So I only gave this book a 3-star. I wasn't a huge fan of it, but if it gets people into historical romance, because this is one that is really mainstream right now, I will be happy for it if it does that. Now let's go through a few real quick. I read Unravel Me, the second book in the Shatter Me series. This was okay. It really progressed one of the love stories that I like. We get to see more of the powers that are used, and we've really put together kind of our X-Men group is what I'm calling them. This is great. I'm reading the third one right now. I think I gave this one 4 stars though, because it really kind of like stalls out the plot in a certain area and nothing really moved forward, which is annoying. I read the first 2 books in the Gabriels series. I read Gabriels Inferno and Gabriels Rapture. Gabriels Inferno, the first book in this series, which I picked up because I guess part 1 of this is on Passionflix right now. I've decided I'm not going to start it because I guess it has a cliffhanger at a certain part of the story, and so I'm going to wait until the whole first book is out, because I know where they're going to end it, and it's a horrible cliffhanger place, and so I'm just not going to get into the show yet. But this is about Professor Gabriel Emerson. He is a Dante specialist, as in Dante's Inferno, and he has a new grad student whose name is Julia Mitchell, and she actually knows him from the past. He is her best friend's older adopted brother, and he used to be into drugs, and so he doesn't remember her when he meets her. He has since cleaned up his life, become a professor. He is, you know, very successful, wealthy, all these things, and so he doesn't recognize the girl that he used to be obsessed with when he was on drugs. Only Julia doesn't know that he was on drugs, and so she doesn't understand why the man won't pay attention to her. I will tell you, I was very interested in this story. I gave this first one 5 stars. It had such a crazy build-up, and how the secrets were revealed was very interesting. I really felt for Gabriel, even though he's being a total jerk to her in the beginning. It's understandable. He's her professor. He's meaner than he needs to be. It's just part of the trope of this kind of story. But also Julia is very frustrating. She's very timid, to the point where you as a reader are frustrated with her of how timid she is. And their interactions with each other, you really just wish she would tell him to go shove it down a tailpipe, really. But I really, really enjoyed this first book. It is big. It is 550 pages. But I really liked where the story went. Their big confrontation they have was one of the most powerful versions of it that I read, and I completely saw both sides of the story. I thought there was no way that I could be on Gabriel's side the way that he acts to her, but then there's some things that Julia does that I was like, girl, you are wrong. Like, you're just wrong about how you reacted to this, and I really appreciated that. I really liked how it was done. And then we have Gabriels Rapture, which is a continuation of the story. This is where things start to drag a little for me, and that's kind of where I'm having trouble with the series right now, is I'm in the third book, Gabriel's Redemption, and it's kind of stalling out. But the thing is, this story, for how passionate and like crazy that it looks and seems, all the covers are really dramatic, it's actually a very slow burn. Even once they are quote unquote together, it's a very slow burn growing of characters and things like that, and it's very relaxed. This is not erotica at all. Like, sex is not the main focus of the story at all, which you wouldn't guess based on the covers. This is really a contemporary romance where we're getting to know the characters inside and out, and their pains and their demons and their trauma, and it's fantastic. Trigger warning for the first book, there is an assault that happens not by our main character but to Julia, so know that. Then I read The Professional by Kresley Cole. This is my first Kresley Cole book. I read it because The Master, which is the second book in the series, was suggested to me by Fated Mates, the podcast. I haven't read the second one yet because this was so this is a mafia romance. It's about this girl named Natalie, and she finds out she's been looking for her biological father. So she was adopted as a baby, and since she was 18, she's been looking for her biological father. And one day at a bar, she sees this super hot Russian guy with these tattoos, and she goes up and flirts with him. He turns her down. And then a couple hours later, he's in her apartment while she's taking a bath and tells her that she needs to leave the country with him right now because her biological father is actually a mob boss in the Bratva, and she's no longer safe because his enemies are coming after her. So she has to make the split second decision, not really by choice because he forces her to come with him, that he is her bodyguard and protector and she must go and stay with him. This novel was amazing. Her father is not what you're expecting him to be. He is the nicest leader of Bratva I've ever met. He is warm and fuzzy, and he's a clockmaker, and it's fantastic. However, the Serbian, who is the name of our character here, Alexander, he's not so warm and fuzzy, but he loves his father figure, the leader of the Bratva, and so he wants to take care of the daughter, but he is seriously attracted to her, and they both are just a little bit interested in BDSM. So there's that. I can't wait to read the next book, which is about Alexander's brother. So this is actually about 3 brothers who are the Sebastians, and I'm very excited to read the next one. But this was 5 stars for me. You know how I feel about mafia books. Then I want to talk about, I read The Madness of Lord Ian McKenzie by Jennifer Ashley. This is actually a historical romance. This is about a man who is on the autism spectrum. He is considered mad. He was held in an asylum for many years of his life because he witnessed a crime that his father committed, and his father knew that he could have his son committed and everyone would believe it because of the characteristics of autism that Ian projects. It was easy for his father to get him thrown into this asylum. Now, when his father died, his older brothers sprang him from this as soon as they could, and he actually works for his brother, helping him with investments and contracts and things like that because he has an eidetic memory. Whew! This book is fantastic. We meet Beth, who is a widow, who is going to marry this one guy, and then Ian lets her know some shady dealings that this guy has, and he is obsessed with Beth, and he wants to marry her, and it's about their love story, and it's adorable, it's gorgeous. I love them. This may be one of my favorite historical romances now, and I can't wait to read the rest of the story. And then the last one that I'll talk about is Insidious by Alitha Ramig. This was a pick my friend Steph from Steph Reads Romance picked for me to read. This book is a erotic thriller, I guess. I forgot the thriller part until I got to the last page because this has kind of an interesting ending. But this is about this girl who, when she's 18 years old, she's kind of coerced into a marriage with an older man, and she doesn't fully know all the aspects of this marriage that she's getting into. That's the best way to describe it. There's a thriller aspect. There is, I don't know what else to say. I don't want to ruin it for you. It's a pretty quick read. We may or may not be doing a live show about this book, so keep an eye out for that. That's all that I can say. So there you go. That is everything that I read this week. It was an intense week. Holy crickets. Let me know what you think of some of these reads. I'd love to hear. And yeah, I'll see you in the next video. Woo!